Here we are. Good evening. Thank you all for sharing that experience. Incredible film, and now you're going to be able to hear from the filmmaker and his comrades. The reason why this conversation is so beautiful was because Mr. Gerima got to choose who he wanted to be on screen with him, on stage with him tonight, and he wanted to choose his students. So former students of his at Howard University to have a conversation about his work and their work. So special. So allow me to introduce Raafi Rivero, Howard class of 2004. Raafi. There he is. Hello, sir. There you go. Right out there. Daniel E. Williams got his MFA from Howard in 1998. Class of 2005, Howard University, Bradford Young. And the maestro himself, Haile Gerima. All right, so in this conversation, we're going to talk a little bit to start about why, Mr. Gerima, you chose this group of students. And can you tell us a little bit about them? Maybe you can start with Raafi.
Well, first, many, but we couldn't accommodate in this context. The many we know are in New York, LA, Chicago, Minnesota, Minneapolis. Everywhere there's black filmmakers that have no industry to go into. If I repeat myself, when I was asked at one point, I said, well, at UCLA, Larry Clark, Charles Burnett, Ben Caldwell, all those black filmmakers and Chicano filmmakers like Francisco Martinez. We were graduating, we did all our film work, but we were graduating into a desert when white kids graduated into an industry. Whether the industry took them or not, they were going with a different psychological makeup. But for us, it was a barren world. There was not a black company we could go and be part of and build some of the things we dreamt. And to me, when I was we were talking about who people should hear from. The first few people, and many were, but at least the ones who made the scrutiny of space, time, and organization was Daniel and Raafi. And Daniel, I want to start with him, yes, if you don't mind, because he's also the oldest. You can see his head. Daniel, one time I'll never forget it, because when you teach knowing what I know, black kids paying tuition to want to tell their story, to be storytellers in this media, it hurts a lot, because I know that they're graduating into a desert. I know it deep down, but I would not share that with them. But at one point we were in a coffee shop always. My relationship with all of them was not, there was always debate and discussion. So that's why my growth as a filmmaker, they have a lot to do with it. It's, a lot of times people always think teaching is like a pope and a student. For me, they were the communal people that kept me alive as a filmmaker, my students. They were all my partners. So I asked them, we were sitting in a cafe on U Street, and there were about 8 or 6 or 10. And I said, what happens if Hollywood doesn't take you? What is going to happen? And Daniel said, I'll keep writing my poetry. And that's what he does now. He keeps making movies in a very prolific way. He has over 10, 12, 15 films I've been watching. I will know it from script to execution, etc. And so I felt so good because no system was going to kill him from making and telling. Nothing was going to stop him from telling his stories because he said, I've always written poetry. I'll keep writing poetry if I can't afford to make movie. I thought that's a story of a warrior. And then Raafi is another hardworking, quick learner, and a warrior. I don't know how he put together 72 hours, his film. But the day I saw it in the Black Arts Festival in Philadelphia, I stood to thank him, but I couldn't thank. I was choked and I was crying, literally crying. And the audience were kind of like, they didn't expect this would happen to a guy who made Sankofa cries, the guy who made Bush Mama cries. It was a everybody was coming and hugging me outside. In fact, I think I ended up disturbing the debate and the discussion that Raafi needed to have. And so this is very, very important. Now, Brad has worked with me from day one when he came to the film school. He was part of the editing crew in the Adwa and African Victory with Lauren Hankin. He was the guy who communicated with my co-producers in Germany. His handwriting is still in my drawers, in my filing cabinets. And he was not only about filmmaking, that the limelight part of it, but he was literally doing the nuts and bolts of a producer's role with this film I made called Teza in Ethiopia. And then when I took him, Burns, Ambassa, these Howard kids, when I shoot a film like here, their contribution, my students are, I take them to learn in this whole non-student kind of situation. And when Brad and Burns and all these young people were running around working in a department, and the department heads were running them and I'm like, I'll sit down and watch them. Again, I'll be in tears almost because I see them surviving production circumstances with different kind of characters in the department head of those things. So Brad was always along there with my experience. He worked in our office. But one thing I'd like to tell is my wife and me, every time he went to Louisville, Kentucky, we wait for him because we're going to be subjected to a new story. And we'll be like this waiting. And when he comes, he tells us about his grandmother, his grandfather, Louisville. It's like an amazing, unforgettable stories and scenes. And to a point, in fact, he has a film he directed with Oscar Brown Jr., who does the voice in Sankofa, The Spirit. And he's in his film, and it's a historic film. I'm waiting for it to be finished or be put out, etc. That's another story. But these people, I think, exemplify the sisters and brothers I know that left Howard. That's where 43 years of my life is spent. They are in different parts of the United States, some even in Africa, Caribbean also. But their whole life is to tell a story in a very difficult circumstances. And thanks, for me, thanks that some of this, like Brad works with Ava. So Ava has come maybe in the right place where some of them would fall in her independent production or her mainstream productions.
Yeah.
That's my introduction.
That's a good
Did I do
introduction.
okay?
You did well. Very nice. Thank you, sir. So it's so special that, we know you as a filmmaker, and this allows us the intimacy of being able to, see you as teacher and to, talk about this idea of you working with your students as collaborators so often. I want to ask each of you if you could share with us a little bit about your first encounter with Sankofa, the film that everyone here has just experienced. And within that answer, also share how it has impacted this specific film, and Mr. Gerima has impacted your own work. Raafi, we'll start with you.
When I first came to Howard, first of all, I didn't even register for class, I didn't do anything, and Haile took me in and he said, you can audit my screenwriting class, you can just, I won't read your script, but come every Thursday and learn from me. And Bradford was in that class, and so I met like the whole year above me first, and was just kind of, just kind of steeped in this whole culture and watched Sankofa around that time. And for me, the experience was complete of a political education, an aesthetic education, just pure film education. And so to hear it in classes, like going to church, to eat vegan food with Brad, to meet up and talk to Daniel, to watch the film and debate it, think about the music, the editing. It was kind of like this overload of cultural and intellectual and education all at once, and kind of being dropped in the deep end of how to become a storyteller.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Daniel?
I think I used to, well, there was a lot of energy at the time that Sankofa was initially released, and
You were his student before it had been released, right?
Yes, I was a student for a couple of years before the film had been released, and I wasn't really aware of the production, but I knew that when it came out, because there was a premiere at the Ghanaian Embassy, and then there was this huge kind of grassroots effort to distribute the film, and I went to see it in DC. And what I thought was really interesting, outside of just the emotional impact of the film, was that there was another former student who also became a teacher that was there at the screening to interact and discuss with the audience after the film. And I had never experienced anything like that. And that was Andrew Millington, who is now still teaching film at a school in Barbados, I believe. And so that was just a really unique experience, because you had someone who was had been involved in helping to make the film to engage with the audience. And so once again, it wasn't just the cultural thing, but it was also an educational aspect that was there. And I think that was also an extension to everything else, because when Haile could, students were kind of brought into the process in one way or another. And also with Haile and Sharikia, they had their own production company. And so we could see firsthand that this was something that you could actually do, right? We saw the struggle that they went through on a daily basis, but we also saw that they were productive and that they were accomplishing things. And it was very inspirational, at least for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but I know that for me it was very inspirational to witness that firsthand.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes. My turn. So, first time I saw Sankofa was in 1993. The light is okay.
You don't have any hair either.
Three kids. So first time I saw Sankofa was in Chicago at Hyde Park Theater, 1993. I went with a girlfriend and her family, and I wasn't paying attention because I didn't know to pay attention. You know what I mean? It's like, I remember the first time I saw School Day, it was like I went to the theater and I saw all my friends there with their parents, and I was like, it felt like church a little bit. Like, I want to get up out of here and go hang out in the lobby, you know? It was one of those things where I was like, what? This film about slavery? You know what I mean? I was like, okay, I saw it. I sat through it. But then something happened at the end that I was like, excuse my language, oh shit, she just killed that white man. And I was like, I ain't never seen that before. So it stuck with me. And she killed him, and at the end, I was looking around and I was seeing all the elders. Remember, this is like Chicago, Hyde Park, so the nationalists, third world press, Haki, the whole cadre were there. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing Ghana Ba playing, which I didn't know was Ghana Ba playing, and people like literally in a trance. And I was like, I just experienced something crazy. My father, I went home, I couldn't even tell, my father wouldn't even understand. So I was just like, it sat in my mind. I go to Howard, didn't even know I was gonna study film. I was working at a vegetarian restaurant, playing around. And his brother, Charles from Chicago, comes into the office and he says, hey, Brad, you doing film, right? I was like, yeah, I'm doing film. He's like, yo, Haile Gerima just opened up a film production company right up the street, 5 doors down. So I literally put my stuff down, I ran up there. And I go there and I go to the front door and Sandy was working at the front desk at the time. And I said, is Professor Gerima here? She said, yeah, he's downstairs. So I go downstairs, and as I'm walking down the steps, I hear him and another person talking. And I come around the corner, and it's Haile and Stokely and Kwame Ture sitting in the editing. And I was like, okay. I need to come back here more often. It's crazy. Rewind 2 or 3 years later. Now I'm in the film program, and I'm studying, and I'm not even with Haile until grad school, really, but I started just hanging around at the building, and I got to, as Haile said, really participate in with Sharik and his whole family, all the children. Like I felt, I was in the building a lot, so it was a safe place to me. I really felt it was family for me because I was away from family. I need to be around family. I need to be focused on something. You feel you're not if you don't do that, you're gonna get in trouble. So then I started listening. You know what I'm saying? I started hearing. It wasn't just like Sankofa the film. It's been like 2 years before I'd seen it. But then he started talking about film. The film is not a movie, but film as a conversation about resistance. And then I was like, oh, that's that thing I was feeling. But then this is getting contextualized with all the other stuff, like you cleaning Med Hondo's prints, or you're cleaning Killer Sheep. You're cleaning, you're doing all your duties. You're like cleaning these like black classics. And Heidi's like, you didn't clean it well. And you're like, oh, I gotta re-clean it. But then at the same time, you get an education, you hear the stories. So Sankofa really got put into one piece for me later, where I realized that, oh, I'm in trouble, because this film here totally rearranged everything for me about the films I had watched before that I realized. And then I started seeing myself in the film, you know what I mean? Like, I started seeing myself in the film. And so then it wasn't just like watching the film to make the film and understanding what the production was about. It was also like, oh, I need to avoid that person in the film. I need to figure out how to work it out myself to not. So it was just a whole, sorry, it's a long story to say that it was a really, it was a long journey with that film, and it popped up every time, and it still pops up. You know what I mean? It still pops up. Like whenever another film is made about the Mayafa, the Middle Passage, it's still like the bar for me is still Sankofa, because it is truly about resistance. You know what I mean? So the bar for me, you and I have talked about it so many times. It's like, it's just always there. It never left. It's been there since Knucklehead in 1993, just being like, man, she just macheted the white dude, and that was crazy. That's how it started.
So let's pick up on that. So it's 1993, and the film that you've just seen is not financed by any major studio or Hollywood financier. Why? Can't machete the white people in those films. And there's a whole distribution effort that and we've referred to her, but just to formally introduce Shariki Gerima, wife, partner, filmmaker to Mr. Gerima, who is producing the film while raising his children, while he's shooting the film, going in and out to the set, back to DC, raising the money to keep it going. Incredible stories of her massive contribution to this effort, and her name has to be spoken, so we say her name here. Talk a little bit about, because so much we talk so often, there's much press about the distribution effort, but there are two pieces that I want to talk about here that I don't hear enough about. One is how you dealt with reaction to the film, both positive and negative at that time. But I want to ask you first something that I rarely hear you be asked about. I think it's the truth for so many of us Black filmmakers is when we're asked questions about our films, it's about identity, it's about race, it's about caste, it's about culture, it's about you're a woman and you're Black, but no one is really asking about the craft and how we made it, like they're asking our white male counterparts all about there. So I want to ask you a little bit about you as a director on set, working with these actors, and your approach to working in that environment at the time. So money is coming in piecemeal. At times you are thinking that you are not going to may not be able to shoot the next day, according to Mrs. Gerima, right? You are staying focused on story, you're staying focused on this, incredible imagery. Are you cutting in your head? Do you know what's happening next? Are you taking pieces and saying, I will work with these in the edit? Are you on set looking to perfect performance? Are you looking for imperfect performances? So can you talk a little bit about your direction of actors and also your shot selection and how you're maintaining that in such an unruly environment?
Well, I've been very lucky, from Bush Mama early. I've always found community Black folks who are gifted, who really come to collaborate and help me tell the story better. At Sankofa, at the time we were doing Sankofa, there was a money problem, but we also have production approach. For example, I'm very phobic from the time I was at the Goodman School of Drama. Even in Africa, theater, makeup has always distorted Black people because the very foundation of makeup is made within the white supremacist paradigm of accentuating, outlining faces. So at the time of Sankofa, I came up with an idea I realized Black people do not need makeup. I felt they need only special effect for blood, this and that. But I had to put money for 1 week more to bring my actors into Jamaica. I wanted to shoot in Louisiana first, but it was the whole racism we could not cope, and that's why we started going Cuba at one point, Martinique, Venezuela, but we settled into Jamaica at the end. This is 5, 10, 15 years work. But I put money aside to bring them a week early to tan them under the sun in Jamaica. And I felt that's all the makeup they needed. And thank you. I think that was a good choice because Black people have fundamentally a powerful relationship with the sun. And we're sun people, I would say. We're from the equator, etc. So that's one, for example. But it was also 1 week money I'm spending to house to tan. Yeah. The other part of it was, for example, in the scene where Nunu is asleep and the others are talking about the time she killed an overseer just by staring at him, by the power of her eyes. That scene took so many hours to light. And I had a scene to go to a hill, very important location I chose to shoot the scene that when Shango was talking to Juma to go kill the overseer, etc., in that cane field, it was supposed to happen in another location, but I knew I was not going to get there. My budget, my crew, my schedule. So I just, while the gaffers were preparing the scene, I turned the camera and just directed that scene and cut it in. And that, for example, was fighting economics, climate, etc. The rest is really, for me, there were some difficulties with actors. As you know, there are some actors who really don't know the sacred situation of trying to make a middle passage film without economic. The very subject matter is very, very, very hard. And there will be some actors who will react a certain way, and it could be the circumstances of this whole landscape. But there will be some tricksters who would be like completely trying to ruin the production process, some kind of things that are happening. But they don't know, the actors don't know I wrote the script, and I can also rewrite the script as I shoot. And I did hurt some actors because I redirected, when they start playing stardomhood in a very low budget film, First I always felt stars only lived in the sky, but in film apparently they can live in the sky in the film also, etc. But anyway, those things I did, hurtful things, because I would have otherwise to die with the film. And the choice was the individual abused the sacred gift I gave, and now the survivalist Haile goes in, and I'm directing another sister in the scene. The sister is just literally fainted when she saw her part played, but she was not there on time.
Yeah, gotta be on time, apparently.
Confession
when you
time.
make Sankofa. So when we talk about, thank you for that, when we talk about, the scene that Bradford spoke about, it's not in a cavalier way. There's a reason why there is a connection to, even a satisfaction about the scene at the end that you experienced, where, she takes the machete and she kills the white overseer, her torturer, her terrorist. And so for you as students, witnessing that moment, Brad has talked a little bit about the impact of that on him, but Raafi and Daniel, can you speak to, and even not personally, but generally, why that kind of imagery in a story of this kind is so rare and singular in its expression within this kind of film? Like, we've got esteemed professor here who may want to take this, but either of you, to just give it a bit of context as people are watching it, why that moment, in kind of the cinematic canon is so striking.
I mean, Haile always taught us to center our own stories and our own voices. Like, he would never say, write a screenplay, Raafi, black, sits on a stage. He would say, Raafi sits on a stage, and you would specify the race of the white characters. And to just say, this is our story, we are the heroes, decolonize your thoughts about cinema and how cinema has been used punitively against us. Find ways, kind of through our images, through your words, through the rhythm on the page, through the structure of the story, to express a different narrative, a different cultural value set. And so when you see that, that's why that image is so thrilling, because we never have seen, nobody would ever make that movie. That movie's not even allowed to exist unless it's financed outside of the system and written and shot outside of the country and just everything about it. So that was the experience of being taught by Haile, was to unpack everything. I love Top Gun. It's like, we're not doing Top Gun here. Find a new way in. What is your story? What is your organic truth? How can you express that through words and images? And you would, kind of the way you are sitting here at the end of the movie, you just want to run through a wall. Like, it was like that every Thursday. You couldn't wait to get home and just start scribbling in your pad.
Thank you. What about for you, Daniel? How do you feel about it?
Well, I think that's what I could say is that, Haile is someone who has this really strong understanding of structure and dramatic narrative. And so for me, maybe that moment comes through so powerfully because we have been with that character for such a long period of time, and they are systematically being oppressed and abused. And so emotionally, you're waiting and anticipating for that change to happen. And when it does happen, there's a part of you that it's happening with you along with her as well. I also think that this is another aspect of the film that I think also striking to me is the symbolic and visual imagery. Sankofa, the first thing when I saw it was like highly visualize the Middle Passage without showing the ocean, without showing ships. He used sound and he used imagery to suggest the turmoil of the journey. And I think for someone at that time, in school and looking at, making films, that is a revelation to some degree, because you are immediately witnessing what you can do with cinema if you don't have the resources that Hollywood has. You can still make very powerful statements. You just have to find more creative ways to do them.
I have two more quick questions. Mr. Gerima, what was the response from the world, the community, to the film? The positive aspects of it, but also, the criticism of some of the images that you showed that had not been grappled with before, for all of us who weren't there at the time.
Could I also say something about the earlier question? There's a scene, it's to illustrate to especially young people with low budget. For example, there was a first shot on that location. It was a very, very spiritual location. I had afro, I cut my afro and buried it and said, put the camera here and we shoot. That's where this first shot we did in Jamaica. In that shot, there was the two women, the house servants coming in, and one of the sister who was again turbulent about her insecurity, to compensate, to project another thing. She felt everybody was amateur that came from the black community, that's not from theater or cinema. And she felt she was a star, but she doesn't even have that credential. But that conflict made me do what I never did before. I always, from school time, I was very clear. 3 was the most I do, 3 takes for a certain shot. We did 13 take of that shot because the 2 women were fighting. So I took aside the principal character, and I said to her, because of the stuff you have going with her, you're ruining your own role. Your character is being ruined, and I'm not going to take another take. I'm going to go with it, but you are in trouble. She just rose to the occasion and just embraced that woman and like she loves her, etc. And so, again, this is another very important thing that you have to also be prepared to be in this kind of encounter. Afterward, as a producer, after you've got the money, a lot of times our own folks do not know. You just came back from 20 years trying to raise the money. And you're not going to let one shallow person who didn't understand what you're doing to ruin the project, just to add that up. For the other question you're talking about is the distribution?
No, just the reaction, the
The
critical
reaction.
reaction from the black community, from, just across the diaspora. You took the film around the world, but also the criticism, people being shocked by the images, being shocked by what they're seeing because they've never been exposed to it before. What were the kinds of things you were hearing from the community?
No, black folks took it. And I'll give you a good example of what happened in Baltimore. There was a sister in a bus riding, because we were on Westview. As you know, in the inner cities of the community, there's no theaters anymore. So you have to go on the outskirts, if not in a very hostile area, to watch movies. So we opened our film on Westview. So this sister was sitting in a bus, from the way she told us later. And the bus driver was saying, there's a movie people need to check it out, called he didn't even say the name right, Sankofa, he told them. It's showing in Westview. And so one sister said, what is it about? And the brother said it's about slavery. She said, "Oh, damn depression. I don't want to see no goddamn slavery movie." Verbatim, it's not my curse. The whites was told to me. And so the sister, the driver says, "No, this is not about slavery. There's something, it's not about slavery. You got to check it out. I can't even tell you what it is about." And this woman who's listening to this discoursive situation ended up coming to the theater. And Sharik and my sister Salome kept seeing this woman coming every night. We felt, oh, this is dangerous. Finally, she started coming out in the hallway where we're selling leaflets, some things we're doing. And then my sister asked her, "Who are you?" And she said, "Well," when she said, I saw the film many times, and then hearing you guys talk with the audience, I just wanted to see what is my role here? What should I do?" Ordinary sister. And then she decided to rent a bus every night, every show, not every show she would bring 12 people into the theater. From the inner city to the theater. This should illustrate to you that I was like, in the book we're trying to write, this woman is there. There was a sister, from Harlem, an elderly sister. Her name escapes me now, and she and I were to meet in the theater hallway. She wanted to meet me, who I am, etc. So she was on a cane coming towards me, hobbling, and I was going towards her, and she's crying. And this, by the way, I have told everybody, my payment is not money. So many people talk, black people brag about what this film made and this made. No, it's not. I've been hugged by over 1 million black people. That was the gift I know that I remember. Yeah, and so, thank you. So this sister is coming towards me and crying, and then I hug her inside. I go inside and hug her, and she said, "Don't you ever think you made this film. You are only a vessel." And I know what she's saying. And I know what she's saying. I know what happened in the film, etc. And we just hugged and stayed. And so this is again another reaction to say, that these are the situations that black folks, in my view, this is my analysis. At the time we came out, black people you cannot imagine how black people are hungry. And this I noticed when I made my second film, Child of Resistance in Oakland. Black people, and at that time I was like, the white school makes you insecure, I'm not sure. Even if I feel afro and bombastic and fist, I was insecure about white people that have said, "You are a illegitimate creature. Filmmaking is white people's thing. What are you doing here?" Silently, the film school says that. If Charlie tells the truth, he's somewhere there, he will tell you, I think he felt the same way. Ben, every black person felt illegitimate to even want to go to a film school. Chicanos, they were Native American sisters and brothers. The same thing. Everybody that was not white felt illegal intruders in white America's planet. And so coming from that and going to Oakland, showing my film Child of Resistance, and I realized those black people said, "You are our filmmaker, you are our storyteller." Then my confidence started to build up, and all the way to Sankofa, black people kept giving me the certificate, saying, you are. And so this endorsement, for me, one of it, at the time we came out, you got, like the filmmaker who's wanted to quench his or her hunger, black people are hungry. It perverts into many other areas. When any race is denied the right of their story, the rest is really a repercussion. The very crux of the conflict is the denial of stories. Because in stories begin war, conflict, etc. And black people live every day somebody telling their story. In Sankofa, black people saw my wife, my students stand in front discussing with them. I left Howard for 3 years. When they see this discussion, and they always said, when we say to them, we made this film, they go, whoa. They could not believe this film was made by black people. Next thing is giving us money, leaving money in our pocket. It becomes a church. I say to young filmmakers, it didn't go to my brain. I wouldn't allow it. I never had the experience that wanted to make me a monster and somebody like egotistically walking out the filmmaker. No, it humbled me because black people were hungry. They were willing to forgive my imperfection, embraced my film wholeheartedly, and made this film succeed all over, all the way to South Africa. And often we make black people, the minute we learn in Africa or here, our people become miniatures, backward things, would not understand us. Only white world understands our art. Here is where I think we lose the best of the black artists. And if you study jazz, you'll find what I'm saying. Did I go over that?
No, it's good. It was good. It was good. Last question, and I'd like all of you to answer, and we'll make our way to Mr. Gerima. There is I won't say a thing, there is a feeling that has come up over the last couple of years in the black community, and now I see white writers and other folks talking about it, which is a black trauma, right? So people talking about, I don't want to see Sankofa, I don't want to see Underground Railroad, I don't want to see When They See Us, I don't want to see anything that has to deal with, anything that's going to traumatize me, and that is, we know it, we don't need to see it, we don't need to talk about it, there's enough of it. Valid, but what is your view, I'll start from the end, about not just black people, but people who appreciate film and cinema, grappling with, facing, encountering, or not, images that might be seen historically as traumatic by some, historic and nourishing by others, but you understand what I'm talking about, this idea that there's harm in a presentation of certain images. Thoughts on that, Raafi?
I mean, I think there's a callousness to the way that trauma is used in cinema. Like, I remember, I think it was 2015, one of the Avengers movies came out, and then there's this other Marvel movie, or, superhero, and two movies, like, blew up the Brooklyn Bridge, like, in the movie, like, as, like, the big showpiece. And it was just like, you can't just, like, slap around the Brooklyn Bridge, like, as a balloon. And as black folks, we've been that balloon in the history of cinema. Like, that's who we are, that's our role. This film shows all kinds of trauma, but you feel like you want to bust out of your seat because the way the trauma is dealt with, the way that it's processed, the reality, the depth of the character, where we're going, you earn back the power. And so I think it's part of the way we use cinema is to process these traumas in our mind and find voice, find images for them so that we can win in the end, so that we can figure out a way through that to the positive. It's just that some people, some filmmakers aren't responsible with how they use that imagery, and it becomes even more painful to witness again. And so with the right care, like, that's what you're hoping for. You relive something painful so that you can get better from it. And the best writers, the best directors are able to, Haile Gerima, the master, is able to channel us through that difficult place to a place of power, of grace, of love.
Yes, thank you. Daniel?
Wow, that's a heavy question. And I think personally for me, I as I've gotten older, I find myself kind of being in that same kind of emotional struggle sometimes as to whether or not a particular film is something that I want to experience at a particular time. And a lot of times it has to do with what is actually happening in reality. I think, as Raafi kind of alluded to, I think a lot of it has to do with how it is portrayed. If those types of images or actions are done in exploitative ways, then I think they definitely can be harmful. And I think if the storytellers are being honest and truthful and want to kind of convey the humanity that kind of goes along with painful experiences. And I think that while they may be difficult to watch and experience, that they can also be very important and valuable to experience. It's one thing that Heidi told me recently was I don't remember where exactly what was the catalyst for it, but he remarked that Black experience in America is one of struggle. And yeah, so, and so we say, yeah, struggle of making films, but struggle of just kind of living from day to day as well. And I think those are valid things that need to be shared, and need to be told, and need to be expressed.
Thank you. Bradford?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, I think there's so many things working in that scenario. There's so many things that you have to unpack when you think about our understanding of what trauma is and how it mirrors itself in film. Like we are essentially traumatized. Like our existence here is one of trauma. So when we see it on the screen, we're judging its legitimacy. We're judging how it connects to us. We also have a really high expectation for film, right? We don't just look at, we're taught at Howard about the revolutionary potential of film, right? We talked about how cinema has been used through history to like really revolutionize people's concept of self. But we also think about film as catharsis. You know what I'm saying? So for us to see, we expect more from film. We expect more. A film that's trying to unpack our trauma, we expect more than just showing it to us. We expect us to offer a sense of healing. So I've always tried to think about, and I learned from Heidi, I've always thought about what's the healing potential of this film. I did something recently, and AJ was talking to me and the person about it and said, it's not only being well, but it's also about our well-being, and I don't know if I can take film. I often question the potential of film. I think sometimes it's, as Heidi would say, milquetoast and fragile, doesn't really meet the expectation. But I think when it's best, and I think that's really a question about, which is a whole other thing about, what is Black cinema? You know what I mean? Like, what is its potential? What is it supposed to do for us? What can it do for us? And I think we understand it. I'm kind of going all over the place, but just a couple of anecdotes. I learned this with Tezon. I would go see Tezon, and Tezon's a very difficult film to watch. It's very different pace, tone, story. The whole thing is a whole cacophony of things that if you've never experienced a film like this before, it blows you away. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. It's incredibly, but it's incredible. It's very difficult. And I remember going to see the film, and all the scholars would be gone for the Q&A. They out. They're not even there. But the old sisters from DC, the mamas from DC, with their walkers and canes, would be in the front, asking Haile and Sharif all the questions. And they were all about the healing. I see my grandson in that film. They're weeping because they see their grandson. So now that they've seen their grandson, they've healed. They checked that thing off. They see his spirit there, they see her spirit there, and now they've dealt with that. That thing got checked off. You know what I mean? The potential, the broken potential. Somebody breaks your body in half later in that film, and they break your whole physical, psychological potential to sustain or experience your full humanity. They saw that in the film and they said, oh, that was me. That's what they did to me. They broke me in half. But I see it in the film now, and I see it from a filmmaker that actually understands the cathartic power of film, and now it's legit. So now you don't have to, but I think when we hear Black people saying, I don't want to see trauma as film, is because the films that they see unpacking that trauma, we can see right through it. You know what I mean? Our nose, I would always say, our nose for white supremacy is crazy. Our scent for it is crazy. We can smell it from a mile away. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It could be a Black filmmaker doing that, and we can see right through this. What Raafi was essentially saying, it's like when the form is colonized, when the storytelling form is colonized. I don't owe you an allegiance because you have Black people in your film. If the form is colonized, then you are doing me harm. And so I think that's kind of how I see, and I think that's the question of Black cinema. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not just who's making it, but it's like, how are we dealing with these things that really are triggering for us? It's so triggering for us. And you and I talk about it all the time. It's just like, we're standing on some real shaky ground playing around with film. You know what I mean? And so we have to be very, very, very careful.
And we'll end with,
Sister, I gotta say
end with
something.
you, yeah.
And then I'm gonna take over your job because I also wanna hear their film. What are they doing now? Just a little treatment if you have a minute.
Yeah, little
for
quick
this.
treatment, little very
Individually,
quick
I wanna
treatment.
know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
They've been hiding away from me. So I wanna hear about them. But one thing I wanna add here is also, you could, to me, it's a normal reaction that black people, for example, during Paul Robeson's time, black people used to send them scripts to be made. There's a whole problem of the elite black and black people's idea of their history clashes. The elite often has divided royalty to appease white while doing black. And that kind of schizophrenic state of mind makes them produce crazy movies. The second one is, to me, black people are saying, when a white filmmaker makes a film about slavery, or even forget slavery, if you notice Chicago, DC, etc., there's a whole big fight about who is to build the monument of the Middle Passage, or Woodson Carter, or any, etc. Often a white artist is given that privilege. What is denied here is when a black artist puts a monument for the Middle Passage, a whole community, first the artist goes through healing process, putting that up. Second, the community can easily go through his lookalike, his own community people, building that, that monument makes them go through that. In America, what happens is, it's another way of mortgaging black people to say, yes, I enslaved you, but I'm also going to make a liberal film about that history. That position is a very perverted position that comes only from the power of white supremacy. So for me, I always felt black people's problem is so advanced that we, the filmmakers, are behind. They say, don't make a film about us. I've heard a sister tell a Hollywood black guy in Oakland, don't make a film about us ever. This is like saying you're ruining our history. And often, this is like, black people should say, I don't want to see your interpretation of slavery, because often also, it takes away the resistance movement of black people.